Do you have the right tire for your Brompton? A tire can completely change the feel of a ride. After all, it's the only contact point under you with the surface of the road. And they're the only thing standing in your way of a dreaded puncture. In this video, I'll be looking at 3 tires available for the Brompton. They work on both the standard and the electric Brompton. I'll be giving you some tips on tire pressure and how to avoid punctures, and I'll share with you my and Nathan's thoughts on these particular 3. The 3 tires, in no particular order, are the Marathon Racer on the Turkish green Brompton, the Marathon Plus on the blue Brompton, the standard Brompton, and the newest one, the Continental Contact Urban tire on the white Brompton back there. Just to let you know, of these tires, the Marathon Racer and the Continental Urban are new. The Marathon Plus here has a few miles on it. Let's take a closer look at each. First up, the Marathon Plus, a legendary tire amongst tourers and commuters. It has a 5mm thick layer called a Smart Guard, and it's considered one of the best pneumatic tires out there for puncture prevention. It runs a PSI of between 65 and 110. It weighs 480 grams, and it can handle, between the 2 tires, up to 130 kilos. Schwalbe called them flatless, which is a bold claim, and one I can attest is not true. I got a puncture on my Marathon Pluses that I have on my commuter tourer bike in 2 weeks of putting them on my bike. And it took me over an hour to change that puncture. I was 45 minutes on the side of the road wrestling with that tire, trying to get it back on the rim. So angry, I was so frustrated, and that anger and frustration allowed me to finally get the oomph to get it over the rim of the wheel. In fact, Nathan, when he installed the Marathon Pluses onto my Brody, my commuter bike, he managed to bend the rear wheel, and I had to replace that wheel, so that was pretty expensive. I have used the regular Marathons. In fact, it's what I use cycling across Canada, and I didn't have the struggle I had with the Pluses getting those onto my wheel. Up next is the Marathon Racer. It's a lighter weight tire than the Marathon Plus. It comes in at 280 grams. It has a puncture prevention layer as well at 3 mils, so 2 mil less than the Marathon Plus. It has a PSI of 65 to 110 PSI, and it's the least expensive of the tires here today. It can handle weight loads between the 2 tires of up to 142 kilograms. Schwalbe say this tire is faster rolling and offers better grip. One thing to note about these Marathon tires, due to the way the sidewall is constructed, the thumb test, squeezing the tire to see if you need to add air, won't work with these tires. So it's best to check your tire pressure with a pressure gauge or a pump with a built-in one. The last tire is the newest one out there, the Continental Contact Urban. Continental use a woven nylon layer for puncture prevention. They say this is robust but flexible, so offering faster rolling tire because of less rolling resistance, yet still being lightweight, and it is the lightest of the 3 at 265 grams. It runs a PSI of from 65 to 116, so pretty similar to the other 2. All 3 of these bikes have directional tread, which just means that you have to make sure when you put the tire on your bike, you put it on in the right direction, and there's arrows on the tire to help you with that. And they all also offer reflective sidewalls, which I happen to think is pretty important, especially here in the UK, where in winter it can be dark at 3:30. All 3 of these tires are rated for e-bikes. Now, all that really means is that the tires are tough enough to handle the wear and tear of e-bike riding. I promised you guys some tips on tire pressure. So I just want to start by talking about there's feeling fast and there is fast. So if you pump your tire pressure up to the max, your bike might feel fast. That's probably just due to all the vibration, the harshness of the ride. So it might feel fast because of that, but it may not actually be faster. So you want to find that balance between, not too much rolling resistance and comfort, while not going overboard and pumping it up to the max and getting a really rough ride. It might feel fast, but may not be really that fast. And on the flip side, you want to avoid going too low, because if your tire pressure is too low, it will cause wear and tear on your tires, and you'll likely get a pinch flat, which occurs if you hit a bump or a curb, squish your tire up against the rim and pinch your inner tube. You can tell you've had a pinch flat when you get almost what looks like a snake bite, 2 little puncture holes on your inner tube. Underinflated tires will also make you work harder to overcome the rolling resistance. And you don't want to have to work harder. Even on an e-bike, it will wear your battery out faster, so all good reasons to get your tire pressure right. Now, Schwalbe have added some extra protection into the sidewall to prevent cracking should you happen to ride underinflated, which is why the thumb test for tire pressure doesn't work on the marathons. To find your perfect PSI, I recommend starting in the mid-range of the PSI written on your tires. So start in the middle. Lighter riders will be able to go lower, and heavier riders will probably need to go higher. And also, I ride with a slightly higher PSI on my rear wheel because it takes more of the weight of the bike. All right, so now let's get on to how they ride. So in comparing them, I rode all the bikes back to back to back without assist, just to keep a level playing field. Now, I feel like tires are somewhat subjective, so I also had Nathan ride them and give his opinion. So you can see myself, a lighter rider, what I think, and Nathan, who's about 30 kilos heavier than me, what he thinks. Also, we have different ride styles. Nathan rides a little bit more aggressively, on the Brompton particularly. So as you can see, we have a super duper test track we use, and it gives us a good feeling of how the tires corner. But to get a better feel for how they operate in the real world, I also took them for a ride around the neighborhood each. Now, I rode them back to back to back because I just feel like it's a better way to compare them. So, you know, my memory is short, and then that way I rode one, immediately rode the next, and the next. So that's how my very scientific method of testing these tires went. I should mention here that I am not a Princess and the Pea type person. It takes a significant amount of difference for me to really take note. I felt like the Continental were the most comfortable. I also felt like they had better grip around the corners. Now, whether that's a mental thing, I'm not sure, because you can see the difference in the tread. The Continental are a slicker tire, so there's more contact with the surface. So I feel like that's gonna give you better grip. But truly around the corners of the test track, I felt like I did have better control and I could take them at slightly higher speeds. I personally couldn't tell the difference between the Marathon Plus and the Marathon Racers. Now, that could be down to the fact that the Marathon Plus on this bike, they are older tires. They have a lot more miles on it than the Racer does. The Racer does claim to have faster rolling tires, less rolling resistance, but like I said, I couldn't notice the difference, but Nathan said he did notice a difference. But let's hear what Nathan said after he did his test riding of the three.
Continentals, better tread on the corners because there's more contact on the road, I would say, and a bit bumpier on the flats though.
Interesting.
I would say Marathon Plus, obviously a bit more sturdy. More tread on the tyres actually. Sorry, more tread than the Continental, sorry. But not as smooth through the corners. I didn't feel as confident going around the corners.
Also, we should mention that these tires are the oldest.
Those tyres are the oldest actually.
Yeah, so there is some tread worn off of them.
But I would say the same applies for these as well.
Yeah.
The Marathon
Racer.
So
the Racer and the Marathon Plus feel very similar.
Yes, but Continental feel faster.
Yeah.
But puncture proof, who knows?
So when it comes to punctures, the Marathon Plus we've had a puncture on this bike. The Marathon Racers, when they were on the white electric, I did get a puncture. Luckily it was a slow leak and I woke up in the morning to a flat tire. And the Continental I've only had for just over a month, so time will tell with those ones. But I installed them on the bike and had no problem getting them on. But I do have some tips for you on how to avoid punctures. To start with, make sure you don't ride in the gutter too close to the curb. That's where all the debris and rubbish ends up. So you want to ride at least 75 centimeters out from the curb. This serves a lot of different purposes. So you'll avoid the rubbish in the gutter. You will prevent close passing because drivers won't try to squeeze past you because they think there's enough room between you and an oncoming car. It also gives you an escape route. Should a car be passing you a bit too closely and you have to swerve to avoid something, you have that inside bit of room to go to make your swerve. So lots of good reasons to keep out from the curb, punctures being one of them. You also want to keep an eye on your tires and check them over occasionally. You want to be looking for things like something lodged into the tire that, could work its way in and cause a puncture. Also, you want to look for wear and tear, so worn treads give you less protection, and cracks could allow an opportunity for something sharp to work its way into your tire and cause you a puncture. So, which one of these three would I choose? Well, like I said, tires can be somewhat subjective, and priorities, everyone has different ones. I personally enjoyed the Continental the most out of these three, and I like the idea that I can change the tire myself. Nathan would choose the Marathon Racer. He thinks they offer a good ride and a good amount of protection. If you're wondering what to watch next, check out my video on the 7 Brompton upgrades I've done, and thanks for watching until the next video.